Recently, I did an article on the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative, and broadly speaking, it's an infrastructure project that was launched in 2013
Right.
with the aim of being done by 2049. Just by that, with that information right there, it's an infrastructure project that's spanning roughly 5 decades. That's a big deal.
Yeah.
The United States, outside of maybe the Marshall Plan and the Dawes Plan, has never offered that sort of
Yeah, and even those plans, while they were grand in scope, they've never had that, decades long
longevity.
Yeah.
Yes. So, of course, the Chinese Communist Party is out indicating that this is all good. We're just supplying the global
Sure,
south.
it's all wonderful. Sure.
Yeah, with dams, with ports, with roads, with 5G networks, with all of the needed things of today. There is maybe, in my mind, and along with a lot of other Western analysts and commentators, there's a silver lining here, or there's a kernel, something behind the cover. There's an Oz type thing going on here.
Sure.
And a lot of people refer to this as debt trap diplomacy. So what will happen is if I'm China and you're country A, I will give you a loan for a lump sum, a big investment. You will not be able to pay that loan back to me. You will forfeit that loan, and I will take over your dam. So it's very nefarious. Some have called it out, some have not. The striking thing about this whole infrastructure project is roughly 140 countries have signed on already. There are 190 countries in the International Monetary Fund. So this is not some sort of oddball infrastructure. This is a very powerful engine to bring geopolitical change. So coming from the Biden administration, it's very interesting to see their rhetoric with the Chinese party. They have gone lengths to distance any sort of Cold War rhetoric, which is understandable. From a historical point of view, it's understandable. You don't want to you don't want to rebrand things. We saw what happened when we branded the First World War the Great War. 20 years later, we had World War II.
The world to end all wars. Yeah. Okay.
They really missed an opportunity. They should have called it the Greater World War.
So it's on one hand, is this really a new Cold War without bringing in the branding of a Cold War? That's the question I would really like to pose. And then it's important to understand that this relationship, us and China, is different and very similar than the one we shared with the Soviets.
Sure.
So I'll leave you guys the floor.
So, I think it kind of depends on how you're going to define Cold War. In one sense, a Cold War is any conflict in which shots don't get fired, right? There's no huge military buildup, or at least not a buildup of forces facing each other. There was a military buildup during the Cold War, of course, but there was not, with one or two exceptions. Cuban Missile Crisis jumps to mind. There wasn't a lot of direct face-to-face confrontation between the U.S. and the USSR. We used proxies for that. So would this conflict with China meet that very broad definition? I would say it does. There's not a lot of direct military confrontation. There is some. There's always the Taiwan question. There's always the South China Sea question, the military buildup there. China and the U.S. have fought proxy war. Korea, for instance, was essentially a proxy war between the two nations. So, is it a conflict that is essentially bloodless? I guess that's the word I want. Yes. Is it a conflict? Yes. So does that meet the terms of a Cold War? I would argue that it is. I doubt that our State Department wants to call it that. We use that term. The U.S. government used that term, to great effect in the 50s and 60s, particularly, and then the left used it more in the 80s. But yeah, I don't think you'll see a lot of Biden administration officials jumping on the term Cold War. But I don't know what else I'd call it.
Yeah, I think it is fair to call that. It does feel a little different in the sense, almost in a more ominous sense, because of China's just general influence within America. Like, it's not just like, oh, hey, like, I really like Chinese takeout food. No, it's like they own, like massive American corporations. Yes. You find out they're actually owned by like a small billionaire company in China.
Right.
Like,
Yeah, or if they're not, they get, their supply line is completely, exists in China or dominated by Chinese influence. Yeah.
Yeah. So given that, I would disagree with the characterization of a Cold War. Just I guess, George, you are right in the most literal of definitions. Sure, I'm fine calling it that, but it does feel like something. Something worse. It feels that way because of, like I remember reading a fascinating article a few weeks ago about like what happens if you just take China's money out of the U.S. economy, and it's pretty damning.
Yeah.
Like it is pretty
Sure.
crazy, and to think of that kind of influence that China wields. In the most literal sense, yeah, let's call it a Cold War, but it feels like something worse.